This is the weekend edition of Fear and Greed, Australia's most popular business podcast. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, our weekend show is vastly different to the weekday shows because here we are each nominating what we think is the biggest story of the week, the most remarkable story, the sleeper story, so picking out one that's going to be a bigger story further down the track or is kind of flying under the radar a little bit, and then just our favourite story as well to round things off at the end. It is very, very, very competitive, and as a result, we need an adjudicator to decide a winner, and our Fear and Greed colleague Adam Lang is that adjudicator. Good morning, Adam.
Good morning to you both.
Do you think Adam's an adjudicator or more of a sort of punching bag?
No. Well, he gives it to us. I mean, you give it to me. I comment from both of you.
Michael's the victim here.
Well, I am. I start this week as the underdog, as I start every week, because typically I'm coming from a place of disadvantage.
Well, you lost.
Which is what? What's that place of disadvantage?
I mean, that's a minor detail, Sean. I don't think we really need to spell that out. Obviously, I didn't win last week, so I'm kind of coming back from a loss, which was also kind of a loss the previous week. So I just feel like, you know what, everyone needs to root for an underdog, and I want to be the rootee.
Thank you, Michael.
Let's move on. Yeah.
All right, so let's just jump straight into it then. The biggest story of the week, I think we probably need to do things a little bit differently this week because this is one of those...
Here we go. Hello.
I'm not changing the rules. I am adjusting the guidelines. The biggest story this week is undeniably the budget. I think can we all agree on that?
Yes.
Yes.
We agree on that.
Great. Perfect. So I think that, Sean, why don't we pick out a different element of the budget each for the bigger story?
Righto.
Do you want to go for? You sound mildly irritated by this.
No. I'm just thinking of the difference. So, I mean, I'd pick out the spending initiatives, for example. I think that's the biggest thing out of the budget.
Oh yeah, go for it.
So, am I along the right track here?
Yeah.
If I do something like that.
Yep.
Okay.
Do it.
So, really, there's about $14.6 billion in cost of living support over the next 4 years. That's really the government's play at helping people suffering from higher interest rates, higher energy prices, higher inflation, all sorts of things. Basically, it comes in three parts. There's energy price relief, there's rental assistance, and there's expanded income support for people out of work. The other big spending was the $5.7 billion funding boost for Medicare. What I really liked in that was the fact that it should make bulk billing from GPs more prevalent across the country, and that's because there's a tripling of the cost of bulk billing incentives for GPs, so they'll get paid more if they bulk bill. I like that one. Single parents, they'll get higher welfare payments. That's a good one, and that's certainly until their youngest child turns 14. It used to be 8. There's higher unemployment benefits, higher youth allowance, higher Austudy. Whether or not that's enough to make a difference, I'm not so sure. $2.80 a day ain't very much, but it's a start, and I think probably the big criticism out of the budget was that there wasn't enough extra money for that cohort. The budget bottom line, a surplus of $4.2 billion, pretty impressive. I mean, obviously built on lower welfare payments and higher mining tax receipts, but it is a one-off surplus. Down the line, we're going to end up with deficits in the next few years. Just, I think the spending really, and the fact that they did focus on cost of living relief, for me, that's probably the biggest angle out of the budget. I'm on the hop a little bit here, but I think that's a pretty good call, Michael.
Yes, it is a call indeed. And for me, though, I think the biggest story out of the budget is not the individual spending measures, because every budget contains those. For me, it's actually almost perhaps you'd almost say unintended consequences of the budget. And obviously I'm talking about interest rates and the potential for more hikes now because the budget is injecting this great wad of cash into the economy. You had kind of market economists through the week saying that the government is adding about $21 billion to the economy, and you had economists from everywhere from kind of Goldman Sachs and Beta Shares and UBS and EY all lining up to say it is adding to inflationary pressure. That's despite the Treasurer insisting that the cost of living package that you were talking about there, Sean, does the opposite, easing inflation pressures. So I suppose the big question is, what will the Reserve Bank board do? Not necessarily straight away, because a lot of those measures in the budget will take a few months to filter through. So any rate hikes directly resulting from this could still be a little way off. But speaking of rate hikes, last week we talked about the surprise rate hike at the... Now, just watch as I seamlessly segue into another story now to try and get another point here. We talked about the surprise rate hike at the RBA's May board meeting. This week, Adam, we learnt about the impact that it had on the property market, and that impact was quite minimal, really.
But what's this got to do with the budget?
Well, it's tangential, Sean.
First, he makes
at the top of the show, he made the rule that you had to pick a point from the budget. Go on, Michael. I'm just interesting how this is going to...
These guidelines are subject to change, clearly.
I wouldn't be surprised if you lost a point for this sort of behaviour, but go on.
What? It lost a point for trying to make sure that people are too well informed. That seems rather churlish, Sean.
Of the people.
That's right. Once again, the underdog here, and you can see that now. Last week, auction clearance rates, last weekend, last Saturday, Sunday, hit a 12-month high, which is pretty remarkable. It clearly shows that buyers weren't too worried. I'm worried now that the two of you are just like, nah.
I'm worried that this is the most remarkable story and the biggest story, which is part of the budget story, which is all very confusing.
It is the biggest story because it's all about interest rates, Sean. I'm going to have to spell this out for you. This is all about interest rates. It's about the budget. It's about all that money getting pumped into the economy and what that's going to do to interest rates. And I just thought, as a little bit of an add-on, I would tell you that, hey, it's okay if you're worried about the property market and the impact of rising rates. Use last week's surprise rate increase as an example, and we can say auction clearance rates still hit a 12-month high. Perhaps buyers aren't too worried about that kind of 25 basis point hike. So maybe the same will happen for... See, now I'm trying too hard to link it all together. But just...
I mean, look, it's not very interesting, but it is kind of just really, really great to watch you squirm.
Well, just note those points. Inflation, injection of cash into the economy, property market, unaffected, undersupply of properties, population growing, lots of people coming to this country, dominant driver of prices. Put it all together, biggest story of the week. Adam.
Putting it all together. Okay, if I stick to the original guideline, perhaps, I am obviously something of a stickler, I have to call a dead heat on this one because the budget to me is the biggest story, and Sean's spending initiatives supporting the fundamental needs of people probably most in need, $14.6 billion, you can absolutely say it's worthy and it's additional spending.
Worthy. Don't you love the word worthy?
I do.
It's worthy.
Yeah.
Oh, I was falling asleep while you're telling it, but it's very important. That's worthy.
I'm like trying to take from Michael, and be more a person of the people.
Yes, thank you.
Is it working? Anyway, I'll leave that as a rhetorical question. Michael, unintended consequences on interest rates. Well, look, yes, it's additional spending on the economy, but I think they're both really important. And I think you're both consistent in that these are additional spending. And I think that therefore will put longer pressure on interest rates. So I have to call a dead heat on this one.
Does he lose a point for cheating?
Maybe if we say that he gets a point for suggesting the guidelines and then loses it for breaking them.
You know what?
Or loses 2 points.
Just pretend I didn't say anything about the property market. I was just trying to add a little bit of context. I'm sorry for trying to make sure people are informed. God.
Thank you, Michael.
You try and help people out.
Okay. Can I suggest something to break a deadlock?
Yeah.
Criteria?
Yes.
For the judging, as you know, is topicality, timeliness, economic impact, and my subjective bias. And, of course, we've recently introduced melodrama because we are now...
Who introduced melodrama?
Michael did.
Of course.
I lobbied for it and it was approved.
This is the first I've heard of melodrama as one of the...
fundamental criteria of our weekend edition.
Yeah.
I might have made a phone call to Adam through the week, Sean.
I'm unswayable. That wasn't the reason.
And suggested that maybe he needed to look at how these were weighted.
How these were weighted?
Economic impact for me.
Because he kept on going on about economic impact being the basically the 90% of the mark comes from that. I'm like, yeah, that's good. But what about the other ones? And so I suggested that it should be 20% per category. And I think he's taken it on board.
But we only have 4 categories, so that's 80%.
We've got 5.
Where's the other? Melodrama.
Yeah, it's the new one.
Is that the 5th?
Yep.
It's the new one.
It's dramatic flair. Yeah.
Okay, so dramatic flair might be the dividing line today. Michael, this is probably your stronger suit. So, Sean, as unnatural as it might feel, dial up the melodrama.
I feel like I'm a routine. Does that help the melodrama?
Let me
Yes.
dive into the most remarkable story of the
Oh,
week.
please.
Because there was one standout for me, and this is a story that has been bubbling. It has been brewing for some time, and this week it threatened to just boil over in a glorious spray of remarkableness. Don't you think, I don't even think remarkableness is a word. Remarkability, there we go. Don't you both think, and I know you do, that it is remarkable that this week we have had our Trade Minister, Don Farrell, in China for trade talks with Beijing. Actually there in China, actually in person. Because I think that is completely remarkable, and it's remarkable for two reasons that I will spell out to you in some detail. The first one is that it shows just how far Australia has come, how much progress, how many developments have been made in the last 12 months in terms of international relations. It's just been, just under a year since the Albanese government came to power, and the change was really a bit of a circuit breaker for the relationship with China. Because remember, towards the end of the coalition government, for the last couple of years of that government, relations had soured so badly with China that officials on that end wouldn't even pick up the phone. If the trade minister of the day rang, that call just rang out. And here we are, 12 months later, not even 12 months later, and not only is Beijing taking our calls, we're actually welcomed into the country for the Joint Ministerial Economic Commission talks. The first time that meeting's been held since 2017. There's the potential for the Prime Minister to visit later in the year as well. That's one reason. The other reason this is so remarkable is obviously, Adam, because of the impact on Australia's economy. The frosty relations with our biggest trading partner have seen tariffs slapped on around $20 billion of exports, like barley and wine and coal and timber and more since 2018. If the relationship continues to improve, and there's nothing to suggest that it won't, the boost to the Australian economy will be huge, enormous, very significant. And that's what Don Farrell was pushing in China this week. So I'm calling it right here, right now. This is a remarkable story because it is a turning point in Australia-China relations, in our trade relationship with our major trading partner, which, Adam, ticks every single box on your judging criteria, perhaps except for the melodrama, because this was melodrama-free.
I was going to say definitely picks the melodrama box.
No, I left the drama out.
It's something that's been going on for months.
Although possibly more Bold and the Beautiful than Shakespeare in its kind of gearing.
What? That's bullplop.
Anyway, Sean, over to you.
Well, yes. I don't ever know how to follow Michael anymore. It's just become a very random show, this one. So I think my most remarkable story for the week is the demonstration of just how dumb some investors were during COVID.
Good opening.
Nice flair.
I don't want to put any listeners off, but some of you are really dumb. So we saw it we've seen it before, but this week it really came to the fore. So Bubs Australia, not that long ago, the boss of Bubs Australia, a woman named Christy Carr, was standing there next to Joe Biden calling her a hero because Bubs Australia had exported infant formula to the US when there was a crisis in infant formula. Bubs Australia's share price went through the roof. It was quite remarkable, some of those images of Joe Biden and this Christy Carr. Anyway, this week, the board of Bubs Australia sacked her, terminated her with immediate effect. Her greatest supporter on the board was the former chair, a gentleman called Dennis Lin. Well, his employment was terminated as well. And that's that. In a statement, the group said, given the deterioration in Bubs' financial performance, time for a change in leadership. Ooh, ouch. Now, Bubs' share price peaked pre-COVID at $1.39. It's now worth about 18 cents. That was that one. Then there was Redbubble. Its share price mid-COVID was $7. January 2021, it was $7. It's now about 40 cents. Basically, people just aren't using it. It's had to cut nearly a quarter of its staff, including a bunch this week. The CEO, Martin Hosking, he's the co-founder. He's the largest shareholder. He's come back to run it because it is in desperate times. Why did people suddenly think in COVID that Redbubble was going to be the greatest thing ever? Same for Kogan.com, Temple & Webster, these online marketplaces. Suddenly their share prices went through the roof. There was a point there where Kogan.com was twice the size of Myer. It's now about a third the size of Myer. Just some really, really dumb investment decisions in COVID. Totally remarkable. Adam.
But Sean, aren't those decisions because people thought COVID was going to go forever and we're always going to be working from home?
That's remarkable in itself if people thought the pandemic was going to go forever.
See, it's easy to say. I'm speaking on behalf of the dumb investors here. It's easy to say in hindsight. But in the thick of it, in the thick of COVID, there was no end in sight.
Okay, Michael, how many of those did you invest in?
I did not invest in any of them, and this is not an investing podcast, and I certainly encourage you to get professional advice before making any investment decisions, but I did not invest in any of those.
Sean, that was very good use of melodrama. Quite somber. You know, your opening dumb investors had a good splash about it, but then you kind of went down. Bubs Australia, Christy Carr. So board terminated her. I think the wording was failing to follow the reasonable directions of the board.
Yes, the reasonable board directions.
Like, I wonder where that got confused. Like, grow and make more money. You know, it's hard to kind of work out where that all played out. But don't you also think this was symptomatic of cheap money? People were just clambering to invest in things.
Yeah.
And some of them just didn't work out. Really good stories. I have to give this one to Michael Just, because to me, within 1 year of the Labor government taking over at the federal level, we are back in talks to rebuild trade. And that is remarkable.
But it's pretty boring, isn't it? I mean, we've been talking about this for months.
The visit is this week.
But we've been talking about him going for months. We've been talking, on the sidelines of the G7. We had Albo talking to someone or other.
All right, we'll be back in a second with the sleeper story.
This happy group will be back.
No, look, I think in the end, Adam, good decision. What are we, 1.5?
What I'm a bit dirty about that is that, 1.5 to half, Michael, your maths just threw me then, was that he called mine a bit somber. Holy God. Okay, come on.
Okay, wow. This is
this melodrama thing's really working out.
It's really taking off here. Okay, we will be back in a sec with the sleeper story of the week. All right, we're looking for a sleeper story of the week. This is a story that's maybe not getting the attention that it deserves, or it's going to become a bigger story kind of somewhere in the future. Sean, what have you picked out for us this week?
Well, Adam said my last one was somber. This is even worse. This is really, there's about 200,000 accountants in Australia. And this is a story about one of the big firms, PwC. It's getting plenty of attention in the Financial Review, don't get me wrong. However, it's getting no attention anywhere else. But there's been a Senate inquiry. The Greens are onto it. There's going to be major changes to the accounting profession, is my forecast, as a result of this story. Basically, the chief executive of PwC, a gentleman called Tom Seymour, stepped down this week. This has been an ongoing saga. Basically, back in 2014, 15, 16, there was a guy called Peter Collins, a PwC partner. He was doing some work for the government. He'd signed a confidentiality clause, so he wouldn't tell anyone else about the stuff. He got the information and he leaked it to some of his partners and staff at PwC. That was then used to pitch for work to clients, presumably something like, hey, we can help you reduce your tax because we have the inside nod wink on what's going to happen. And PwC actually used that. Now, this played through for a couple of years. The multiple partners were aware of Collins' leaks. Last December, the Tax Practitioners Board terminated his license, basically saying, that's totally the wrong thing to do. You sign a confidentiality agreement. You don't go then leaking to win work. But the scandal just has continued. As I said, Senate inquiry, the Assistant Treasurer, Stephen Jones, is involved. The Greens are calling for more action. Tom Seymour stepped down. I mean, basically last week he came out and said partners directly involved in the leaks of the tax documents had left the firm. But then this week he had to concede that he himself had actually received emails about the leaks, and he was aware that they were being used to pitch work to clients. Hence, he had to go. Another couple of senior partners in the firm have had to go. The main accounting professional body, Chartered Accountants ANZ, is warning that some partners and staff involved could face monetary fines, have their right to practice revoked. This brings up a few issues for a really big part of the economy that we don't really talk much about. It's professional ethics and confidentiality agreements and how the professional services sector works. This could well change rules around all of that. And PwC, which is one of the big four accounting firms, this is a lot to play out for them as well. So no one's talking about it apart from the financial review, but very, very significant. Because remember, every company, certainly every listed company, but almost every company has an accountant, and many of them have auditors. And so that how they play out together as well are going to be affected. How you do work for government, that type of thing. So it's a massive story that no one's talking about. A lot of laughs in it too, just quietly, Adam. A lot of laughs in it too.
That's a good story.
Yeah. Yes.
You don't sound convinced of that. No.
It's a really big story.
Yeah.
But I'm just, the melodramas ain't there.
That's all right. Melodrama's not for everyone. Look, I was actually really interested in that. I'm not setting you up here. I'm actually saying that you told that really well, and I really enjoyed that. My sleeper story is, well, okay, last week I tried something a little bit different, right? And I tried to argue on a technicality, right, which is never going to work well, that AI was a sleeper story now because technically it's going to become a bigger story further down the track. Somehow, I don't know how, I was unsuccessful in that. Possibly because the system is rigged. I don't know. It's not me saying that. Some people are saying it's not me.
Is that my new nickname? The system.
System. This week I'm going very conventional, old school, a true sleeper story. And it is one that we discussed earlier in the week. It's about a test case in the Federal Circuit Court where Westpac is accused of owing a former senior manager more than $300,000 in back pay. At issue in this test case is the question of excessive work hours. And because the manager is alleging that he was working up to 100-hour weeks, up to 32 days straight, which was allegedly in breach of the Fair Work Act's maximum hours protection. Now, you'll remember a few weeks back, about 2 months ago actually, I raised the case against NAB by the Finance Sector Union where another manager made similar claims. Now, the difference in the Westpac case is that these hours were allegedly reviewed and approved by the group's financial controller and recorded in the HR system. So suddenly, here we are with not one, but two test cases, both essentially over the same issue. It feels like momentum is building behind this as a key issue in corporate Australia. And you can guarantee a gold-plated, solid gold, in fact, forget the gold plates. This is a solid gold, 24-carat guarantee that unions and companies right across the country will be watching this one very, very closely, because if either case is successful, it will set a precedent for white-collar workers. And then, Adam, it's a slippery slope from there. You go from 100-hour weeks to a 4-day work week in the blink of an eye, which would be your dream. Right?
That's quite the lily pad you jumped from there.
It is. But I also know that you enjoy the concept of a 4-day work week, and I thought I'd put it in there to see if I could, I don't know, sway you. System.
But both stories are excellent sleepers.
And one was much shorter than the other.
I have to give this to Sean. To me, and this is a little bit of a tangent, but you know how when you have to get a document signed by someone in an official position, there's JPs, there's lawyers, there's accountants. You know, they are deemed with such prestige in society. They've attained a certain level of qualification and ethic that you can get them to sign off on stuff. So when they breach, or someone in that profession breaches a non-disclosure agreement to the government, it's like the government's the biggest employer we have between state, federal and local councils. This is huge. And I do think Sean's right. I think change will be coming. You sign a non-disclosure agreement, you breach it, and there are consequences. These will unravel for some time. Michael, this test case too, that will unravel for some time. So they're both massive stories, but in this particular one, Sean has to get this one just for the week for me.
Yeah, that's exactly what I meant to say too, Adam.
I've got to say, Adam, you're a bit of colour
Melodrama?
there. You're melodrama. Whew. You gave Sean what he was missing.
I stepped in or stepped on stage.
Oh, well done. So what are we, 1.5 to 1.5? It could not be closer going into the favourite story of the week.
It's a great battle. Now, Michael, can I ask you a question?
Oh, yes.
I listened to How Do They Afford That during the week. Which one of your 32 T-shirts are you wearing today?
I am in a plain grey/blue-ish T-shirt. Very versatile. You can mix and match it with anything in your capsule wardrobe, which is a term I learned from Canna this
Very
week.
good.
How many T-shirts do you have, Adam?
Oh, I reckon I've got more.
Yeah, 32. I was surprised. Is that all?
Yeah. I got... I've even got band T-shirts from the 80s and 90s that I haven't thrown away.
Michael, do you know how many T-shirts you've got?
Yeah, I counted.
Why?
Because just had a spare few minutes.
Why?
Because I knew that Canna and I, in the new episode of How Do They Afford That, we're going to be talking about clothes and saving money on clothes. And so I thought, you know what? Because I like to be prepared for everything I do, part of my preparation included counting my T-shirts.
So, Sean, in this moment, I think Canna was quite...
That is just really odd.
So when Michael said this, I think Canna was a bit incredulous too. And she said, there's a stroke of genius to that. Michael's response was, yes, I think so. What is it? So I just loved that Michael claimed the genius and then had to be explained why.
Well, you can find How Do They Afford That wherever you listen to podcasts. It is it's a good listen because it's guaranteed to help you with your money. I think I can make that claim.
No, you can't. No. Yeah, you can't guarantee anything. Sorry. I mean, I'm only apologising for legal reasons.
Oh, well, okay.
We can't guarantee that.
Fine. I will take back the guarantee and I'll just say it is likely to help improve the way you think about money.
That's fair.
Well qualified.
Yeah, thanks. Let's get on to favourite story of the week. Sean.
Why don't you go first?
Okay, I will go first. Well, now.
Step up, ringmaster.
I'm going to say that something about this story feels very, very high risk right now.
Okay.
Considering it's got kind of dangerous terrain written all over it here. But there's no way that I could do any other story for my favourite this week. I'm talking, of course, about Air New Zealand renting out bunk beds by the hour for their long-haul flights. Now,
bear with us, audience, please.
Here we go.
Before we get into the nitty-gritty of what you can and can't do in these beds, it's worth establishing just why they are necessary on these flights. These flights are long, and Sean, you can vouch for this. The Auckland to New York flight, and you came back, didn't you, on that the New York to Auckland leg, but it can take up to 17 hours.
Yeah, but I've got to say the highlight of my flight was when we got to the 17th hour. We were coming in, we'd been delayed off Sydney because of weather, and the pilot came and said, look, we're going to take a run at this. We've only got enough fuel for one approach, so we're going to go. It's like, really? Did I really need to know that? I don't think so. And so
surely it's just a pilot with a sense of humour who just goes, you know what? Everyone's been in the air for 17 hours. I'm going to give him a bit of a liven up. See who's still paying attention.
He certainly did.
Wiggle the wings and pretend it's turbulence.
Would they do that? Well, maybe. Anyway, look, Auckland to Chicago is just a little bit kind of shorter than that, but it's still long. I mean, it's still kind of 16 plus hours, I think. So it's understandable, I think, that economy passengers, these are for economy passengers, that they would be willing to fork out 100 New Zealand dollars per hour for a 4 or 6 hour stint in the Skynest, which is a 6-bed Skynest. Now, I haven't seen pictures of this, so I'm assuming those 6 beds are separated and it's not just a 6-person free-for-all in this little nest.
I think we can be pretty confident.
Like an Austin Powers plane.
I think we can be pretty confident.
Yeah, it's like a Like the sky nest becomes a love nest very quickly. You get a reading light. You get earplugs, which may be necessary if you're the one person out of the 6 who isn't interested. You get a sheet. You get a blanket. You get a pillow. I don't know. What more could you ask for? There's only one booking per flight. So that way you can't just hog it for the whole thing. I'm going to admit, it's been actually a very long time since I had a daytime nap. And I kind of equate this, hiring a bed on a plane for 4 hours, the equivalent of kind of taking a sneaky nap, because you're actually kind of lying down, you've got a pillow and all that. So it feels like a proper nap. The people I feel sorry for in this are the flight attendants who have to wake you afterwards, or the passengers kind of nearby who have to listen to you hit snooze on your phone alarm kind of 8 times before you actually get up. And do either of you remember what it's like when you get up after a quick afternoon nap? I don't know when the last time either of you had a nap. You get really cold. Do you know that?
Yes. Good point.
When you get up and you're just like, oh, I'm so cold. So that's going to be a million times worse on a plane where you've got no control over the climate. So you're irritable. Sometimes you actually feel worse when you wake up than if you just kind of stayed awake and watched the movie. So you're going to have a plane load full of grumpy, shivering people.
A cranky chamber.
For 17 hours, all the way to New York. I'm going to say, feels like this plan, Adam, to use your favourite term, it's got some knobs on it.
Certainly does.
It does.
Certainly
and I'm just going to
does.
leave that one there, because it feels like it's kind of the theme for this whole story. Sean, what's your favourite story of the week?
I need a moment.
I do need a moment. I'm just trying to work out what was just said. My favourite story of the week was some truth-telling from the boss of IBM, Arvind Krishna. He basically came out, oh, I like that. Did you hear that, Michael? Adam goes,
Yeah,
like,
a little moan of agreement.
That wasn't meant to be out loud.
He came and said what many of us have suspected. Working from home could actually be detrimental to your career. Have you guys had bosses? Michael, I might ask you specifically. Have you had a boss we just felt like you had to turn up?
Well, it feels like I'm being very much targeted with this one.
No, I'm actually trying to target Adam on this one because he was your boss.
He was.
Let's move on. He basically said that he's not really going to force any staffers to come into the office just yet, but those who don't probably won't get promoted. I mean, it certainly won't be promoted into managerial roles. He said managing people is tough when you're out of the office, but you just, because you just don't see your people enough. So you need to come into the office and see your people. And we all know this is going on in the world, but no one's really saying it. And for the fact, the fact that the boss of IBM actually came out and said it, I mean, particularly IBM, because they're making money out of cloud computing, which of course allows us all to work from home. And yet he's still saying this. Anyway, the debate really now seems to be coming down to the CEOs saying that, workers need to come into the office, and they always talk about younger staff for training needs and all that sort of stuff, versus those who are saying, but I'm happier at home, I'm more productive. But this guy's just come out and said, that's all fine, but you ain't getting promoted unless you come into the office. Finally, someone saying it as it is. My favourite story of the week. Adam.
This is a challenging one for me. IBM, I think that is the disposition of many companies. So I don't know whether it's my favourite thing or not. Air New Zealand's Skynest, very good. I love the innovation. I really do. But I think for economic impact, I think Sean has to win this for the IBM story, because I think many businesses feel that way compared to the number of people who might patronise Air New Zealand to use a Skynest. So, Sean, you win.
Well, that's a turn up for the books.
Yeah, I feel like
you're a routine.
Yes, my status as the underdog routine is preserved. No, I feel like I've snatched defeat from the jaws of victory here. Well done, Sean. Adam, take us through the points.
All right.
Tell us how did this travesty happen? No judgment.
2.5 to 1.5, because you obviously were dead even in the biggest story of the week with the budget. Remarkable story. Michael, you won. Don Farrell in China for trade talks. Sleeper story, Sean won. The accountants and the PwC NDA crisis. And then Sean brought it home really well with the truth-telling at IBM. So over the Sky Nest.
What about the points, though? I think
Okay.
Michael's
Overall.
2.5 to 1.5.
Such a close battle. Michael, this might be yours and Sean's highest scores ever. So Michael, 95 points.
Oh,
Sean, 97 points.
oh.
I'm just disturbed by your response, Michael, to Adam saying 95 points.
A PB.
So you got 95 points and didn't win.
Good battle.
This is going to take some recovery. Well, you know what? We'll line up and do it all again next week.
Let's do that.
Look, thank you very much, Adam, for your excellent judging today.
Thank you, Michael.
And congratulations, Sean, and thank you.
Thank you, Michael. I love the melodrama.
Indeed. Make sure you're following the podcast. Join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Don't forget as well, you can stay up to date on all the business news with Alexa. You can get this episode every weekend using your Amazon Echo smart speaker. Simply say, Alexa, play the Fear and Greed podcast, and the latest episode, being this one, should just start playing. Grab yours now at amazon.com.au. I'm Michael Thompson. Have a great weekend.